Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for our virtual info session about the Duke MBA FinTech Club. We want to keep this very informal and answers a lot of your questions, so feel free to ask us some questions and we'll get those answered as soon as we see them over here. So just by way of introduction, my name is Sean Mehta. I'm one of the co-founders of the Duke MBA FinTech Club. Prior to Fuqua, I worked at a company called Cambridge Associates, advising large institutions on how to invest their endowment portfolios, and really got interested in FinTech by helping the company create this portfolio management software. And during my summer internship, I worked at a FinTech startup in Chapel Hill called InSolutions that's creating a technology solution for single and multifamily offices to help them manage their operations. And so we're really excited to talk to you about our club and why we started and our mission. And so I'll let SK introduce himself first before we get into the details.
Thanks, Sean. I'm SK. I was originally born in India, and then I moved to Singapore about 12 years back to pursue my undergrad. I was a banker for 7 years in Singapore before I decided to pursue my MBA. So once I got here, I got really interested in FinTech as well. And over the summer, I was with a student lender in New York, helping them with capital markets. This was Empower Financing. We're here, excited to answer all your questions and share with you what we're doing in and around FinTech at Fuqua.
And while we wait for your questions, we'll just kind of talk about why we started our club and our mission more broadly. We officially launched in spring of last year. We submitted an application to the MBA Association to start this professional club on campus. And the inspiration for us was that we did a lot of off-campus recruiting last year for FinTech specifically, and did all the legwork, talked to a lot of alums within the industry and a lot of companies. And so we didn't want that work that we did to go to waste once we graduated, and so we wanted to pass that along to first-year students this year as well as future Fuqua students to help them in their off-campus recruiting process at Fuqua. And so our mission more broadly is to create an ecosystem that supports Fuqua students that are interested in the FinTech industry. And that includes both educational as well as career-related programming. We're hoping that in the future we get more Fuqua students interested in the field and into companies that are in the FinTech industry.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. And just to add to that, we've had about almost 200 members join us within a week of us starting out. So we've seen a lot of interest from MBA students. And when we speak to them, there's really both. There's a lot of people who want to learn more about the industry and they imagine using this knowledge in the future, whatever career paths they choose. But a lot of people are now looking at this as where they want to go for their internships and the first jobs after an MBA, and we hope to help them with that. So some of the things that we do in order to make that happen. So maybe let me get that started in terms of what kind of events and initiatives have we planned. So I do want to caveat that this is we've just started. This is our first year in action, and so a lot of what we're saying, some of those have happened, but many of those are in the pipeline, and we hope to achieve those by the time we hand over the reins to the next co-presidents of the FinTech Club. So let me take it from the top. One of the first things that we organized was what we called FinTech Symposium. We did that in collaboration with the Tech Club here. And the idea was to bring speakers and experts from the industry, from a wide variety of companies, to come down and speak to MBA students, especially the first-year MBA students, and tell them about what kind of MBA career opportunities exist out there in the industry, and specifically in their firms, and what does that look like in the longer run. So very career-focused event. We saw a great deal of success. We had a lot of companies come down, the likes of Empower Financing, Prodigy Financing, Common Bond, and a number of other such firms. With that, after that, we had a big info session where we're sharing more about our club and what are the things that we're planning, and that's where we truly recruited the members. And when I said we had about 200 members, that's when a lot of that happened, once people found out that there's a FinTech Club now at Duke, and what are the things we've planned for them. So those are some of the things that we've already achieved. The things that we're working on now, and some of those have started, are things like a weekly newsletter. The weekly newsletter will have information about what kind of job opportunities are coming out, what's the latest industry news, maybe some fun facts and words that are particular to the fintech industry. And as part of that, one of the things that goes weekly to students is something we call kind of like a database, which has a lot of companies listed down there that potentially hire MBAs with the recent job postings that they have there, as well as like a linked alumni database that tells them who are the Duke or Fuqua alumni that are there at such companies that students could reach out to. So it's a lot of, so there's events, but there's also initiatives, there's also resources that we're trying to provide to our members that will help them in their job search. Sean, you want to share about some more of the things that we're planning and that are in the pipeline?
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think we're really interested in doing is partnering with maybe Keenan Flagler and other business schools and institutions in the area to host a conference. One, to get everybody in this area, which is a very exciting area, the Research Triangle. There's a lot of exciting new startups here and fintech companies. Get them all together, pool our resources, and to put on some programming that is educational and teaches people about the fintech industry and the different subsectors. So the one thing that we wanted to set out initially is that fintech is a very broad term and industry, and there's many subsectors within that. So there's payments, investments, lending, cryptocurrencies, and so one of the main reasons why we started this club is to educate people on those different subsectors and say that if you are recruiting for it, it's important to specify which subsector you're specifically interested in. And so part of our goal is to educate people in those career opportunities. We do have a question from Adam here, and he says, are you finding other classmates that want to start fintech startups and are doing so while in the program? He has two questions, but we'll answer that one first.
So, to that, I would say we personally have not come across somebody who wanted to start a fintech startup specifically. I know that there may be some interest. There's a few first years who've come from that background that were running or part of fintech startups, so maybe that interest develops. But one of the things that we have seen and we wanted to talk about was how Duke University as a whole, which is outside of the business school, there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity going on, and we are very close connection with them. They have a blockchain club at the university, more focused towards undergraduate students. So there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity coming out of there, and we're finding ways to connect with them and work with them, help them out with the business aspects. And we think once that ecosystem is set up, once we're more connected with the professors as well as the students, we do see more activity of that nature coming up, but maybe that's not been a big focus till now. Really what we're trying to do is engage with the industry, reach out to a lot of companies that are already existing out there, and a lot of them are startups or fresh ones, like where Sean interned over the summer was a relatively new fintech startup. So what we're trying to do is get them on campus, talk to our students, or hold webinars, and hopefully even recruit them to start with internships, but also going forward for full-time jobs. So
yeah, and I would add to that by saying that if you look at a lot of the fintech startup founders, there's a lot of them are Duke alums. And so, for example, Plaid in San Francisco and Vestwell in New York were both founded by Duke alums. And so, again, I want to echo that, maybe you don't see Fuqua alums starting fintech startups, but our network extends beyond just Fuqua, and it's the Duke community more broadly. And I think that in terms of entrepreneurship at Fuqua, there's a program called the Program for Entrepreneurs, which allows you to essentially get credit for taking a risk while you're at business school and coming up with an idea for a startup and really going forward and try to start a business out of it. And so I think a lot of, I can see a lot of fintech startups coming about through that program, and that's a very popular program here for people. So please do some research on that if you are interested in doing something more entrepreneurial focused while you are at Fuqua.
Yeah, so that's the program for entrepreneurship. So that was a part two of that question about the EMBAs. I'm not entirely sure if you're referring to the executive MBA programs.
Probably.
Maybe if you are, there's nothing stopping the students to maybe interacting with us, maybe coming to our events when you have educational events, etc. But I think a lot of the focus, especially as we just start out and build up that infrastructure, is focused towards full-time MBA students, just because there's a certain kind of jobs that they attract, and internship programs that's a little bit more structured, and companies understand that better. EMBA can be a little bit more catered. So there's no reason that we don't want to help, but I think that's not been the major focus of the club.
Yeah, and anything we put on, any programming, we open the doors for everybody. We want to cast a wide net and really get everybody interested in FinTech. And so if you are an executive MBA student, we do welcome your participation in our club, attend events, and so we do welcome EMBAs as well.
So there's one more question here, and basically, this is about InsurTech. So they're asking that does that come under the wagon of FinTech? Bandwagon of FinTech, sorry. And would mentioning a niche role affect their chances of getting admitted to the MBA program? I'll take a stab at it, and then Sean, see what you want to add to that. So on the first part, is InsurTech part of what we're trying to do? Definitely. So we didn't mention that, like as Sean was mentioning, there's payments, there's lending, there's cryptocurrency. We can keep going on, and we have like some 10 to 12 sub parts of that. So it definitely falls under what we're trying to capture and educate people about. And we will be reaching out to companies, InsurTech companies as well, as we will to some of these other ones. In terms of does that affect your chance of admissions? Maybe we're not the best persons to ask that, because we're not directly involved with the admissions process. So it's something that you definitely should reach out to the admissions team and ask them how that would affect. But I don't see why not, because if you already know what you want to do, and there's a clear story of what you did and what you hope to gain in an MBA and how that leads to that, I think that's typically what's being looked for, aside from a personality match or fit.
And no, I don't think it will affect your chances at all. I think, in fact, it shows that you've done a lot of research. You've found this new and exciting industry to enter, and you're not just kind of doing the traditional MBA recruiting path. And so the one thing I think we could talk about here is the difference between going to a small technology-based fintech company versus going to a more established financial services company that is investing heavily in technology. And so in your question, what I initially thought of was there's big insurance companies that recruit at Fuqua, such as Liberty Mutual and Allstate, who are investing heavily in technology and doing a lot in insurtech. So when we talk about fintech, we want to make sure that it's a wide spectrum of sizes of companies, not just the small ones, but also the established ones that are more recently investing more in technology. And so I think if you are interested in insurance and technology, I think InsurTech is a great option, but definitely look at all sizes of companies, not just the traditional startups.
Thanks. So we have one more question, and please keep them coming. So Gaurav's asking what large technology companies are hiring for fintech roles. Example, PM for Google Pay. So firstly, most large companies hire at Fuqua, so just generally for technology roles. And when they're involved in fintech roles, they do hire PMs for that. And that's happened in the past as well, and that will continue to happen. So that maybe we weren't even needed for that. The tech club was handling that pretty well. So if you need some examples, PayPal has been hiring here for a long time. Google does that. Amazon does that, which does not mean that they're hiring people for those roles every time, because those are based on their needs. So they don't necessarily every time need a PM for Google Pay. But there was somebody who did work on Google Pay in the past summer from our class. So that's happening. Some of the other companies would be like what Sean was saying, the established companies such as Visa, MasterCard, Amex. So they've been around and they're traditional financial services firms, but increasingly looking more like fintech, increasingly wanting to increase their investment into the tech side of things and functioning like those kinds of firms. We also have large banks who now have fintech arms hiring specifically for that. So they were hiring for investment banking and consumer banking before, but now they want to hire for fintech. So there's a pretty decent list of companies. So those who do have roles are coming and recruiting for those. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that we want to do is make those more formalized and be the channel for them so that we can introduce them to the students who are most directly interested in those roles.
Yeah, and I would add, again, the big companies, there's Vanguard, Visa, all these established companies you know of, are opening what they call innovation centers or have fintech groups within their different groups at their companies. And so increasing the visibility for Fuqua students and having that interaction between these established companies and Fuqua students is one of our major goals. And so we hope to bring representatives from those innovation centers to Fuqua to talk to students about the exciting technology-focused initiatives at their companies.
Yeah, so and one of the things we're doing for that, just going back to the events and initiatives, is basically we're hosting either webinars or in-person sort of meetings with some of these larger companies who want to address our club members, both from an education standpoint, but also about what career opportunities exist and what can students do to go after these opportunities. So we have Visa in the pipeline, we have Square in the pipeline, and we're working with a number of other ones to bring them all the way from now up until the spring, when people are continuing to recruit, but also just want to know about what opportunities exist there.
Yeah, and so Fuqua is a very student-led culture. So I don't think it was a very good opportunity that we had to start a club. We had this interest and passion and drive for fintech, and we approached the MBA Association and said, we want to create this institutionalized system for people that are interested in fintech. And so part of our goal is to work with the Career Management Center and establish the relationship and then pass that along and make it more institutional so that once we leave, these companies will have relationships with Fuqua, for a long time. And so we've been working. We have a sector director within the CMC now, named Michael
Career
Wong,
Management Center.
Career Management Center, Michael Wong, who's been excellent and very excited that we've started this club. And even talking to alums in the industry and industry experts, we could sense their excitement that we started this club and finally that they have a point of contact at Fuqua and are interested in coming on campus and really recruiting Fuqua students.
Yeah, so we recently put together our club cabinet, basically the leadership team that's helping the both of us to see through this mission and make sure that it comes through and we can pass on a club in good hands to the next set of leaders. And as part of that, one sub-cabinet or a few people are involved in external relations. What that means is really reaching out to alumni, both Fuqua and Duke alumni who are out there working in fintech firms of all sorts, and bring them back on campus. Make sure that they're part of our alumni database, which we share with our club members so that people can reach out and find out how can they work, learn from them, both in terms of their specific companies or sub-industries, but also network with them, find more relationships. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of what we hope to do as a club.
Yep. Thanks for the great questions, guys. They keep coming in. An anonymous user says, "Thank you very much for the clear response. I would appreciate if you could list the ways in which I can reach out to you both or the club cabinet." Yeah, feel free. I mean, we talk to prospective students all the time about why we started the club, how the different opportunities for them in the fintech space, and so we're happy to jump on an hour-long call if that's what you guys want. My email is Sean, SHAAN.mehta, MEHTA, @duke.edu. And
I'm happy to put that down in the comments later, I think, rather than spelling that whole thing out. But you'd find it easy to find us on LinkedIn maybe. So check it out. I don't think it'll be very difficult if you put in Fuqua and class of 2019. And we're working on an external website which should go on anytime now, maybe this week, as early as this week, which will have our contact details as well as that of our cabinet. So we're trying to make it easier for prospective students to reach us, but that hasn't stopped a lot of you to already reach out, and we're excited about that there's a lot of interest coming in for going forward as well.
Yeah, we love talking to prospective students, so don't hesitate to do that. Gaurav, another question. With China, India leading the fintech revolution with WeChat Pay, Alipay, UPI, is Fuqua and the FinTech Club leveraging Duke's connection with Chinese universities and GATE trips to acquaint students with trends and best practices in this hemisphere? Definitely. I mean, I think we're very focused on partnerships. We want to use resources both at Fuqua and Duke more broadly, as well as other universities do have fintech clubs. I think if you look at a lot of MBA programs, fintech is a hot topic nowadays. And so we are working with a lot of our professors, a lot of faculty at Fuqua, and to see the best way we could put for this programming forward and help Fuqua students. And so that's a very interesting idea, having FinTech somehow represented in GATE trips at Fuqua, but that's something we haven't talked about yet, but it's definitely something that's on our plate.
Yeah, thank you. That is a great idea. And on the other hand, so as an example, I intend to go back to Singapore after I graduate. So that is definitely something we see. We want this to be international. We recognize FinTech is not just something that's happening in the US right now, but very much in other parts of the world, and even more so sometimes in places such as Asia and Africa, where FinTech's helping with financial inclusion. So that's an angle we want to continue exploring. We're in fact working with faculty here who are researching on things like that to share more about that with students. So which is why we said we have a dual mission of both career but also education. So definitely something we want to do. The GATE idea is not something we thought about, but definitely something we can pursue.
We have some great professors that are doing a lot of research in the space. So Aaron Chatterjee has just done a lot of research on disintermediation in business, specifically even the financial services industry. We have Manju Puri, who's done research on financial inclusion.
Cam
Harvey, who's an expert on blockchain. And so we want to use all those resources. And SK mentioned financial inclusion. And if you're interested at all in social impact, I think FinTech is a really good way to enter that space through financial inclusion. So using technology in developing countries in Africa and Asia to help people manage their finances better. And so there's a lot of work being done in remittances, in payments, and in lending for small and medium-sized businesses that are part of financial inclusion. And so if you are an international student and come to Fuqua and want to go back to your country and make an impact, or even stay in the US, there's many options within FinTech, both domestically and abroad.
And something that helps with that is at Fuqua, we have a really great social impact related program. We have a CASE, which is the Center of Advancement of Social Entrepreneurship. And so they were already doing a lot of things around that, not solely focused on FinTech, and those are the kind of partnerships that we're looking to pursue and make sure that we're covering all aspects of this. It's a huge industry with many, many subparts, with many angles of why people want to get into it. And we're trying our best to cover all of it. At the same time, recognizing that this is a first year, a lot of our focus is in establishing the firm, the club, putting things in place, the infrastructure in place, so that we can do more and more of such creative things and be more to more people.
Yeah. Hang asks, does Fuqua have any FinTech-related courses or other resources? I know Professor Campbell Harvey Innovation and Crypto Ventures. Yeah, so that's definitely, Innovation and Crypto Ventures is, I think if you think about FinTech, that is the FinTech course at Fuqua. It's a lot of focus on blockchain and how blockchain is being used in various industries, not just financial services. And Cam Harvey, again, is kind of an expert in the industry and puts a lot of research papers out and goes on CNBC and all these other shows to talk about blockchain. In addition to that, again, Manju Puri has a Raising Capital in Financial Technology course. And there's other courses at Fuqua that may not seem from the title FinTech related, but are do cover some topics.
Yeah, so I think both of us did Managing of Innovations course last term, and one of the things that we cover is financial technology. So it's not a course solely dedicated to that, but as we've come across, even the year and a half that we've been around here, we see more and more courses having relevant cases, which have to do. Even our core marketing course had a FinTech-related case. So you'll see it touching everything, but solely dedicated course, maybe a couple of those right now. But we see with increased interest, we do have a lot of people researching in that industry. So we can foresee more courses coming in.
Yeah. While we wait for another question, maybe we could talk a little bit about the recruiting process of FinTech at Fuqua. And so, again, to reiterate, we did a lot of off-campus recruiting, and that includes the CMC is great. They help us a lot with off-campus recruiting. One of the steps is creating a company list and then researching which alums, both Fuqua and Duke, are within those industries and those companies that you're interested in working at. And then doing outreach, doing a lot of informational calls, some coffee chats is what they call it, to learn more about the companies and express your interest. And so our goal is to help people in their off-campus recruitment process, and then hopefully down the road have a lot of these FinTech companies move more to on-campus. And so I think a lot of them now, some of them have established MBA programs, but they don't come on campus in the traditional sense that a lot of these big technology companies do. And so part of our goal is to explain to them the value proposition for them to come on campus, interact with Fuqua students, and get to know them on a more personal level. And so our goal is to do that going forward.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to add on to the recruiting process is how just because of the nature of the industry and because it's the recruiting is still formalizing, that allows a lot of students to pursue dual sort of recruiting goals. So a lot of them will recruit for maybe finance, which means banking or technology or consulting in the fall, and then they move on towards FinTech a little later down to more in the spring. That does not mean that you can completely forget about FinTech in the initial part. You need to already start doing your research, reaching out, to alumni and the companies. But at the same time, because they don't happen exactly overlap, these timelines, that is allowing people to explore FinTech. That is what we benefited from. We both did a lot of the FinTech recruiting in the spring, got opportunities that we wanted and worked out well for us. But while it also allowed us to explore some of the other things that we were interested in before we finally got to FinTech. That was our primary aim.
Yeah, and so I think if you look at traditional MBA paths like consulting, banking, and tech, that'll happen, from August through maybe December, and then interviews start happening in January. And so a lot of people have this dual focus because for FinTech, especially if you're doing off-campus, it's between January and May. And so we both got our internships pretty late in April, and that's completely fine. Sometimes it's easy to get caught up in the hype of business school and everyone's getting offers, but to get I think we've noticed a lot of the interesting jobs really open up later because the companies have just-in-time recruiting. They don't really know what their hiring needs are until March or April. And so I think we would advise you to be if you're interested in FinTech, be very focused on that, and don't settle for something that you didn't come to business school to do. And so being patient and waiting until March or April to get that job, I think takes a lot of patience, but I think it'll pay off down the road. And again, to reiterate, you can't just forget about FinTech recruiting in the spring. You have to make these connections early on, maybe even October, November at the latest, just so once that application comes out and you apply, they'll remember who you are. They'll remember that they talked to you, in the fall, and then you're not just reaching out to them to get a job. And so developing those relationships takes time and foresight to do very early in the process.
Yeah, we seem to have a few questions.
So there's a typical FinTech club member, and what is his or her background, finance or tech, or from other industries as well? That's a good question. I could take a quick stab at that. We've noticed a lot of people interested in, a lot of people who come from financial services backgrounds like us, who want to do something, more entrepreneurial, more technology focused, and go into FinTech. We've also seen people, who have no finance background that are interested in FinTech because it's in the news and it's this exciting and growing industry. And so I don't think you need to have a typical background to enter FinTech. Even within FinTech, there's many different functions you could go to at a company. And so there's finance, strategy, business development, product management, product marketing. And so it's a very wide range of functions you could do at a FinTech company, and it's really more about expressing your interest and passion for the industry as opposed to having some sort of relevant background. And so we've talked to a lot of companies, and they keep telling us that they recruit people with a wide range of background. They actually prefer that diversity of experiences rather than recruiting a typical person with a finance background or a tech background.
Yeah, good question. So Shivani is asking us that, can you brief us on how we leverage this club to prepare for summer internship in a FinTech job? Another one it's very interesting. So here's the truth of it is this is the first year of our existence, so we haven't gone through the cycle where the club has helped anybody. So we co-founded this, literally we got approval to start the club in the last week of our first year. So that activity did not happen last year, but of course we were the prime targets who could have benefited from training of that sort. But that's part of the mission of the club. We want to do that. In terms of what that would look like, I think at this point, at a very basic level, we're starting to do lunch and learn sessions, which is basically getting second years who interned in the industry, or some of them went there before or are intending to go there, who have a knowledge about what these internships look like, what these jobs would look like, to actually just get a few students together who are interested in that or who are going to the industry and share their experiences about it. So they come prepared with a little bit to share what they want to, and then it's like an AMA, it's like an Ask Me Anything, somewhat like this session, where people can ask whatever they want to, and the students will help. But other than that, I do want to mention that a lot of that internship prep is done by Fuqua as a whole. It's done by a career management center. It's done by some of the other clubs as well where it's relevant. So we don't intend to just put on programming for the sake of it. Where we feel, let's say the tech club is already doing some things that are relevant, or the finance club, we'll partner with them to make sure that it's applicable to our members as well. But where we think it's more specific to FinTech, we're going to put on programming around that, but probably later in the spring.
Yeah, and so again, we have this company database, right? And so in your off-campus search, you will use that list very heavily to narrow down to like your top 10 to 40 off-campus company targets. And so we're creating a FinTech company list. And so essentially a database with all the companies, what subsector they're in, what stage of funding they are, who the best contact is that we've established relationships with, when they post their job. We have a whole list of attributes that we want to associate with these companies, and so you could really leverage that document, sort down by the type of FinTech company you want to work at, and then begin your outreach there. And then so what we are doing as well, in addition to that, is sitting down one-on-one with first-year Fuqua students, talking through their story, helping them narrow down that list, and then being that resource to them, not just in the spring, but starting now, to help them through their recruiting process. And so we have that experience. We did that same exact process last year, and we want to pass that knowledge along and those experiences to first years. And so it's a very hands-on, personalized approach to FinTech recruiting, and you don't get that at some of the more established clubs here, that are big, where the recruitment process is pretty established, like finance, technology, or consulting. We are really investing heavily in that one-on-one personal guidance and recruiting search.
Yeah. Let's check if there's any more questions. That went
Not
away.
Yet. Feel free to keep passing it along. We want to keep this informal and answer the questions that you are that are on your mind. So there's nothing's off limits here. We're happy to talk about anything related to our club.
And if you don't have them now and you think you may have them later, you can reach out to us. So Sean already shared his email. Otherwise, you can reach out to our admissions team, and they can connect you with us as well.
Yep.
And as I shared, we're going to have our website up and running very soon, so you could actually find our contact details quite easily. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be in this forum if you feel right now is not the time when you have to ask questions. We'll remain available, so will our cabinet. So maybe with that, we'll close out on the questions, and we'll start wrapping up here in terms of the last thoughts that we may have for prospective students.
Yeah, and so thanks again, everyone, for joining. We're the co-founders of the FinTech Club, and part of that is we are very excited. I mean, this is our passion. This is what we came to Fuqua, and I had no idea I was going to start the FinTech Club at Fuqua. But the school is a very student-led culture and has been very supportive in us in establishing this club. And so if you have any questions, need any help, I think you'll notice that we are extremely receptive to your questions, your outreach, and so do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions about the fintech industry more broadly, the recruitment process, your application to Fuqua, and what would stand out in an application. And so don't just think that we can answer questions about all sorts of things that are on your mind.
Yeah, and that's something we've been doing already. Like we said, a lot of you have already reached out through this process. And it doesn't have to be just FinTech, so we're Fuqua students, and we're more than happy to help you through your admissions process as a whole, and in terms of helping you decide as well whether you should come to Fuqua, and why we chose to be here, why we started the club, and why we think FinTech is a great place to go to once we graduate. So with that, thank you for being with us. We hope this was helpful, and continue to reach out. And we hope to see you on campus maybe we won't be there by the time you come in, but we hope for you to reach out to us once we're alums.
Yeah, thank you.